morning, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to Close Up this Sunday. First up today, is there a movement afoot to bring an income tax to New Hampshire? That's what some of the headlines have read recently. State lawmakers are planning a meeting in October to discuss the tax structure in New Hampshire. Now, it's being billed as bipartisan and educational, but some are worried that that's a secret plan to enact an income tax. And here to talk about that today is Mike Brunelle. He's the executive director of the New Hampshire Democratic Party and also served on the Ways and Means Committee.
I did. Thanks for having me.
Years ago. Thanks for being here today. And also Kevin Smith from Cornerstone Policy Research. Thanks for coming in today.
Pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it. Mike, let me start with you. Talk a little bit from what you know. I know this meeting is still being formed right now, but what is this thing going to be about?
Well, this is just going to be a forum that gathers information. It's going to bring together Democrats and Republicans to take a look at our existing revenue structure and see if there's some ways we can tweak it to make it more friendly to our economy. I think that a lot of it that I've heard is going to be dedicated to taking a look at how we can help our business community and we can grow jobs and create them in the future. You know, some people have billed it as you said, you know, there's going to be a secret income tax or sales tax. That could be no farther from the truth. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, we looked at things like this all the time, and it's important that our legislators have information so they can make good decisions when policy comes forward, and I think that this is just a means by which to take a look at things. You know, actually right now, there's another thing going on where the governor set up a commission to look at expanding gaming. I mean, this happens all the time, and any attempt to make it other than what it is just partisan politics.
Are the income tax, sales tax, things like that, are they on the table at a meeting like this?
Well, every year there is someone that submits an income tax or a sales tax bill. What I can tell you is this: there are not the votes in the House, in the Senate, and the governor has pledged to veto a sales or an income tax. This is not happening. The people of New Hampshire have said they don't support it. There is not support for it in state government. So at the end of the day, this is just to look at existing revenue, and that's the big emphasis, you know, looking at our existing tax structure as it is now, and seeing ways in which we can tweak it, or if there are ways that we can make things better so we can generate more revenue or make it more business friendly, so we can continue to create jobs and turn this economy around.
Kevin, let me get your reaction. You heard about this meeting, obviously. What are your concerns?
Well, Sean, I think you just touched upon it when you said, you know, our sales or income tax off the table. We would like to hear that, yes, indeed, a sales and income tax are off the table and they won't be studied at all at this summit. You know, the other thing, too, that we're really concerned about is we're wondering why there's a summit to look at the tax structure in our state when we should be looking at the spending at the same time. You know, we should be looking at that concurrently. You can't figure out how much money you have to raise and spend if you don't know what you're going to be spending it on. So what we'd like to see is really a study and an analysis, soup to nuts, of all government programs in the state, and look at them and say, okay, which programs are working, which programs aren't working, which ones can be eliminated, which ones can be consolidated, which ones can be reformed. And then you can look at the tax structure and say, okay, how much money do we need to raise in order to pay for these services? But absolutely, an income or sales tax should be off the table when looking at those different options.
Is it not? Sorry.
I would say that it is off the table. And in terms of spending cuts, this budget did cut general fund spending. And Democrats in the House and the Senate and the governor made significant cuts to health and human services. You know, we closed courthouses, the Laconia prison, the Toby school. And I have to say, Republicans sat on the sidelines at the end of the day. And you know, on the 11th hour, they came forward and said, let's cut spending by 13%. Do you know what that would have done? 40% of the budget is aid to cities and towns. You cut 13% there, you're downshifting costs onto local homeowners, and that would have balanced the budget on the backs of local property taxpayers. That is just wrong. At the end of the day, we like to hear some specific cuts from the other side. I agree that we need to look at everything. We need to look at existing revenue, we need to look at spending, but we'd like to hear from the other side where their ideas are. This shouldn't just be obstructionism. It should be a collaborative process where people are rolling up their sleeves to find real solutions to the serious problems that we're facing. That's what they're elected to do, not to play politics.
Do you feel like there are ideas coming from both sides of the aisle on how to cut spending?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the numbers can be played either way. State spending has gone up 25% in the last 2 budget cycles. There were 41 taxes and fees that were raised in this last budget. I mean, that's just unheard of in this type of economy. And there was downshifting to the local communities. In fact, there were cuts made in state aid to the local communities in this last budget that there's actually a lawsuit that I believe is pending right now to look at that exact thing. This just was not a responsible budget. As we know, the part of the budget is currently in court right now with the whole JUA funding. You know, there has to be cuts made And a lot of times the devil is in the details. And the cuts can be made at the executive agency department with the agency heads coming forward and submitting their proposals. The governor had originally asked for budgets at 97%. Where did those budgets end up? So, you know, I think there can be a lot of tricky digits going on when people talk about, well, you know, general fund spending going down. The fact of the matter is that overall spending has gone up 25% in the last 2 budget cycles, and we just think that's irresponsible.
Can I respond to that? Because, you know, he did talk a little bit about, you know, tricky numbers. The fact is that general fund spending did go down. The reason why he's talking about spending going up is because we received money from the federal government, stimulus dollars that are putting people back to work. I find it highly irresponsible for any executive or government to say, no, we're not going to take these dollars when we're trying to turn around this economy. It's the worst economy since the Great Depression. And in terms of the spending increases from the last session, I know, you know, we were going through the budget process. The spending only increased the rate of inflation. The reason why is non-discretionary spending and the retirement system that we had to fix. And that was where most of the spending came from. And you know why that was the case? It was from years and years of Republican legislators neglecting to fix that issue. And so that's why spending went up. You know, either side can play it both ways. But if you look at it down the middle, spending only went up the last biennium by the rate of inflation, and general fund spending went down. We took federal stimulus dollars. It was the right thing to do. We're fixing our roads and bridges. We're putting our people back to work. So let's talk in reality here.
Sean, I would just say, too, that there was a lot of one-time money spent. A lot of that money was spent on education funding. The fact of the matter is that nobody knows where that next pot of money is going to come from in a couple of years from now. And in fact, if you look at the current education funding formula, we go back to a system of donor towns and receiving towns in just 2 years from now. I mean, that's what the court said we absolutely could not do. Governor Lynch had proposed a constitutional amendment a couple of years ago and couldn't gain support on either side of the aisle for that constitutional amendment. So I wouldn't say the education funding problem is fixed. That's still looming out there. The other thing with businesses, too, is that we want to entice businesses to come to the state. You don't do that by levying an LLC tax on them, which the legislature did this year. You know, if you look at the business enterprise